Hi everyone, Josh here with Top Score Tutor. Thanks for tuning in. In today's video, we're going to look at setting your target goal and how you're going to use your target goal to create your own individual study plan. So let's go ahead and get started. Goal setting. So what is your score goal on the SAT? Now is the time you want to start thinking about the schools that you want to get accepted to so you know what SAT score you need. Doesn't have to be set in stone, those schools that you want to consider, but it's a good idea to help you learn what you need on the SAT and create this study plan going forward and use it as a good estimate. So let's look at an example of setting our target score. I'm going to use Florida State as my example for today. That's where I got my bachelor's degree. So obviously that's where I'm going to use as my example. So represented here is a snapshot of students that got accepted into Florida State in 2019. Let's focus on the fall SAT scores. So you have 1270. That represents the 25th percentile. That means that for students who scored a 1270 on their SAT, scored better than only 25% of the students that got accepted that semester. Whereas the students that got a 1390, that's the 75th percentile. That means students who scored a 1390 scored better than 75% of the students that got accepted into that semester. Your goal is to aim somewhere in the middle, about the middle 50th percentile. So whatever the range is in that school, you want to find that around that middle number, and that's going to be your target goal. So in this case, about a 1300 is going to be our target goal that I'm going to use as an example for today. This is how most schools express their SAT score requirements as part of the admissions process. There's not one specific score that you can get and automatically get accepted into that school. And if you don't get that score, then you're automatically disqualified. Remember, your SAT scores are just one part of a bigger picture, a more holistic review that schools use to determine whether or not you should be accepted. In fact, other criteria such as your GPA, the difficulty of the classes you took in high school are more valuable in determining admissions than your SAT scores. So the stronger your GPA, the more difficult the classes you took in high school, AP, honors, etc., then if your SAT scores aren't at that 50th percentile, they're not in that middle range, you very well could be okay. Clearly, as my example shows, students got accepted into FSU in that fall 2019 semester with that bottom 25th percentile, with that 1270. So again, let's use 1300 as my target score goal for today. Whatever your target score goal is that you set for yourself, just follow my exact calculation that I'm about to do. It's really simple and it's really easy to plug in. So we're going for 1300. This is how you're going to use that 1300 to set and create your individual study plan. The lowest score that you can get on the SAT is a 400, right? The highest score that you can get on the SAT is a 1600. That's 1200 possible points, right? To go from 400 to 1600, that's 1200 points. If I want to get a 1300, then to go from 400 to 1300, that's 900 possible points. So I want to get a 900 out of a 1200, so to speak. 900 divided by 1200, that's a 75% that I want to get on this test. A 75%, that's all I need to get on this test to achieve my score of a 1300. That's the equivalent of a C. That's it. It's probably the only time I could bring home a C and my parents would be proud of me and I would be proud of myself. The SAT is unlike any test that you've ever taken. So we need to get it out of our mind that I need to get an A. If I don't get an A, then I didn't score well. In this case, if we get a C, we got a 1300, and I'm probably going to have a good chance of getting accepted into a lot of schools. So let that already be a stress reliever. I don't need to get an A. I don't need to get a 1600. If your target score goal that you set for yourself is lower than a 1300, then that's probably a C minus or even a D that you can afford to get on this test. If you're going for higher than 1300, then really at the most you're probably looking at is a B on the test, which is still, you don't need an A, you're not going for a perfect score. So again, let that already be a stress reliever for you. So here's what you do with this information. So if I need to get 75% on this test, there's 154 total questions on the actual SAT. 75% times 154 is 116 questions. This is my target goal on the SAT, 116 questions. Now, getting 116 questions will not automatically guarantee an exact 1300. It should be used as a reliable estimate because the SAT is curved. Not every test is scored equally. So if I get 116 questions correct, I have a really good chance of getting a 1300, but it might be a few points below. It might even be a few points above. Again, this is just something to help you create a study plan going forward and to give you a reliable estimate. Now, every time you study, you're obviously not going to take a full-length practice test and be able to determine whether or not you got 116 questions correct. You're going to study in sections at a time, right? So if I need a 75% on the entire test, then if I get a 75% on each section, then I'm going to be close to achieving my target goal. So here's how that would look. Let me rewrite 116 questions up here. That's what we need to keep in mind. So on section 1 of the SAT, there's 52 total questions. But again, I only need 75% of those questions correct. So 75% times 52, that means I am aiming for about 39 questions correct on section 1. On section 2, there's 44 total questions, but I only need 75% of those questions correct. So 75% times 44, my new target goal on section 2 is about 33 questions correct. Section 3 and 4, these are the math sections, and they group that together on your score report. So we're going to do the same. So there's 58 total questions on the math section, but I only need 75% of those questions correct. So 75% times 58, my new target goal is about 44 questions correct. I'm going to come back to this in a minute. So now that you know what your target goal is, before you even begin studying, you have to take a full-length practice test and write down your scores. You need to know where you even stand before you begin studying, because you want to study smarter, not harder, right? You want to use your time wisely. So we need to know where you even stand. We need to know your areas of strength and your areas of weakness. So you want to take a full-length practice test before you begin studying and write down your scores. So one important thing you want to keep in mind, simulate the conditions of the actual SAT when you take your practice test. The real SAT is given first thing in the morning. So you want to take this test first thing in the morning. If you do it after a long day of school or homework in the afternoon, whatever, your brain's not going to be as fresh. This is a long test that requires a lot of mental stamina. You need your brain to be as fresh as you possibly can because we want to get the most accurate and reliable score of where you currently stand. So take it first thing in the morning and adhere to the breaks that they give you on the SAT. So here on the screen, they give you a 10-minute break after section 1. They give you a 5-minute break after section 3. And if you're going to take the essay, they give you a 2-minute break after section 4. I always hear my students say, no, I'm good, I can keep going. It's a long test, use the break, rest your brain a little bit so we can see the best you can possibly do to get you started. So let's say I took my full-length practice test and I graded myself. Here's what you're going to do with that to continue creating your study plan going forward to work smart. So let's say on section 1, let's say I got 31 questions correct. I got 31 out of 39. I didn't get 31 out of 52 because I'm not going for a perfect score. 31 out of 39 sounds so much better. I'm only 8 questions away from my target goal. Section 2, let's say I got, for example, 29 questions correct. Wow, I'm only 4 questions away from my target goal. 29 out of 33 sounds way better than 29 out of 44. And lastly, students do tend to struggle on math. So let's say I got only 27 questions correct on the math, which would be minus 17. 27 out of 44 sounds way better than 27 out of 58. Let this be another stress reliever for you, because I didn't even start studying and I'm pretty close to my target score goal already. I can make up and improve by 8 questions on section 1. I can improve by 4 questions on section 2. And I can improve by 17 questions on section 3 and 4. So it's a lot less daunting. It seems a lot more achievable and realistic to overcome those goals than if you were thinking and had the mindset that I need to get all the questions correct on each section. So you want to study according to this. Clearly in this example, math is my biggest weakness. I missed 17 questions on math. So that's where I'm going to focus the majority of my time and attention. On section 2, I'm only 4 questions away from my goal. I'm not saying don't even study section 2. I'm not saying go weeks without looking at it. But what I'm saying is you don't need to stress section 2 the same way you need to stress over the math sections, because you don't have as much room to make up on section 2. So you want to start with your areas of weakness first and focus the majority of your time and effort on those areas of weakness. And you don't need to put in an equal amount of time and effort on every other section. You don't need to stress those other sections as much. You still want to study it. You want to get the best score you can possibly get, but just know you're already close to achieving your target score goal. Here's why you want to do your best on each section. Even though you have your target goal, you still want to do the best you possibly can. Because remember, at the end of the day, you need 116 questions total. It does not matter where those 116 questions come from. So you might be looking at this and be like, man, I don't know if I can make up 17 questions on the math section. I really struggle at math. I'm just not good at math. So again, you only need 116 questions. So maybe instead of stopping at 33 questions for your target goal on section 2, because that's the section you did the best on, maybe you want to set your target goal higher than 33 questions to make up for any other areas, any other sections that you're not performing well and having difficulty reaching that target score goal. Again, the 116 in this case is what you need to keep your eye on. And the last point, which is certainly important, is after a few weeks of studying, you want to take another practice test and determine if progress was made. Every time you practice, every time you take a practice section or a practice test, you always need to record your results and determine if progress was being made. If progress was being made, if you're getting more questions correct and getting closer to your target goal, then what you're doing is working. Keep doing it. But if you're not seeing any progress made, then that means that you need to go back to the drawing board and adjust your study habits. Maybe you need to be studying longer. Maybe you need to focus more and spend more quality time and attention on the questions and see what you keep getting wrong. So that's why it's really important to always monitor your progress and adjust your study habits accordingly. So that concludes this video. I really appreciate you tuning in. We learned how to set our target score goal and then take that goal and create an individual study plan. Again, my name's Josh with Top Score Tutor. And remember, with consistent and quality practice, it is impossible for your SAT score not to improve. Best of luck.